afternoon, Rich Tyson here. I continually ponder the ideas and the questions that may be helpful to my clients who are primarily CEOs of small to medium-sized companies. One of the most important questions that I've raised over the years is, are you fundamentally a learner? Are you still learning? As we have the opportunity to own a business or to become a CEO of a company, there is a natural tendency to feel a bit of, hey, I've arrived, and not being critical of that per se, but there's a danger in it, and that's the danger of now that I'm in that top position in an organization, somehow I've been endowed with more knowledge, more capability than anyone else. And while there, again, may be a bit of truth in that, there's a real danger in it. It is the danger of the knowledge we have that begins to cause us to have a myopia where we screen out new ideas, whether those come from our people or around us, generally our customers, or whether it comes from discontinuing the process of going through formal learning, whether that be book learning or listening to podcasts or however we choose to learn. So it's essential, as I ask the question, are you a learner? I think for each of us to consider, how do we learn and why do we learn? And how do we keep our learning on the bleeding edge of things so that we deliver the very best in not only our products and services, but our leadership itself? One of the great tools that I've enjoyed using, it came from the Gallup organization, the Clifton Strengths Finder. Strengths Finder 2.0 is the book, and it helps identify certain personality traits and so forth. And one of the great ones is learner. And these are people who like to learn, love to learn, to a certain extent, or just enjoy the process of ongoing study and learning. If you're like me, I've had a lot of years of formal classroom study. I couldn't wait to get out of school. It was like all I've ever done is school. When I finished high school, I went to college. When I finished my undergraduate, it wasn't long before I was in graduate school. And it seemed like it would never end. And yet, when it was all over, I had this sense that while I had learned a lot, there was so much more that I needed to learn. And so, one of the keys, I think, to great leadership is to be a lifelong learner and to have, as the Clifton Strengths Finder people say, a real love of learning. Now, that may or may not be one of your top personality traits. And it doesn't need to be, but I think whether it is or not, we all need to have that sense that it's important to continually learn. I wrote an article not too long ago, a blog, if you will, called Don't Let Expertise Die. And the subtitle was 3 Essential Components for Lifelong Learning. And I really drew these from a man who was an incredible lifelong learner. He was a man who lived in the 19th century, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he is the only man that I've ever heard described as having read every book in the Harvard Library. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of us can or should attempt to do such a thing, but in that era that he lived in, there were far fewer volumes, and he made it a quest to do that. As he did so, though, he began to look for ways that we could all be better learners. And the first thing that he said, surprisingly enough, was not book learning. What he said was get out in nature, observe what's going on around you, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the forest, on the beach, any venue. This ties out so well with a recent presentation that we've had to our CEO forums, where we had a great speaker, Christopher Lichty, who addressed how IDEO, the great design thinking firm, goes about developing great new innovations. And surprisingly enough, they don't just immediately go into their labs, if you will, and create something. What they do is they get out and they observe. They look for where there's customer pain or a problem that is yet to be solved, and they observe how people are working around to solve problems. I call it the duct tape and baling wire approach to solving problems. So many of the things that we do in life are like that. We end up, rather than getting to root causes and really fixing things, we do the workarounds. Years ago, my wife said, "Hey, you know the what do we call it? The pipe that goes under your sink, the P valve or whatever it is plugged." And she said, "Hey, can you fix that for me?" Well, I got into working on it and found that what we had in terms of the plumbing was quite old. And so as I went down to Home Depot and got what I thought I needed, none of it fit. And so I got frustrated, and rather than tearing it all apart and fixing it like I should have, I thought, hey, the leak's not that bad. The clog's not that bad. I got the clog out. Now I can fix the leak with duct tape. And so that's what I did. Well, that worked. We didn't have any more leak. The clog was gone. Hey, I'm a great fix-it man. Well, fast forward to about 2 years later, the duct tape bulged and then burst, and we had a flood. It was a workaround. It was not a fix. So when we go back to Ralph Waldo Emerson's first idea, he says, hey, observe what's really going on and learn to go to the issues, the pain, and so forth. Fits IDEO perfectly. That's how they look for things to solve, and they do it even not just for products and services, but they do it for social problems and so forth. So the first rule of learning, observe what's going on around you. The second one, Ralph Waldo Emerson came back to the issue of books. He said, be broadly read. Now, not everybody likes to learn that way. And in a subsequent video, I'll talk about some of the different ways we learn. If you don't learn by reading, so many of my clients don't enjoy reading, but they do a fair amount of traveling up and down the freeway and so forth, and they will listen to podcasts. They will listen to books on tape, is what I call them, the audio books. And so this way they are still getting the content that they need to help them in their important roles. So nature, then books. Then the third one goes back to something from IDEO, which is get into action, prototype, try things out. Until we take the knowledge we have and start utilizing it, it isn't worth much. And so as we learn new things, try to put them into action. One way to do this is as you build on the knowledge you have, don't let go of what you've already learned, but relate what you've learned, what you know, to the new things. Sometimes new things will disrupt what we know. Sometimes, in fact, they will fit very well together, and we want to build on our knowledge. So, 3 great keys to being a lifelong learner. Be observant on what's going around you, relate to people, interact, see where the problems are, what the customer pain is. Secondarily, read a lot. There are so many great books coming out all the time about how we can strengthen and improve our leadership, strengthen and improve the way we deliver to our customers. Get on Amazon, or there are some great websites. Read It For Me has book reports where you can get a summary of things. Don't neglect the written word that you need to learn from. And then third, absolutely try things out. When you see something new, one of the great blessings we have today is a variety of apps that are available online. Utilize those to increase your ability to understand and learn as you grow. As leaders, we need to be competent and we need to be confident. And if you recognize in yourself that you're never through learning, then I think you're in a great starting spot. So much of life is distraction. We can end up with a lot of video games and so forth. Even adults play a lot of those. I have a few that I enjoy myself, or a lot of television or other distractions. The time passes whether we utilize it and invest that time for learning or not. And so I encourage you, each of you who would watch this video, to see yourself not only as a leader, but a lifelong learning leader. Um, the things that you learn will also help your people learn. We'll talk about more competency development, not only for yourself, but for your people, and some great processes on how to do that in a future video. Thanks so much for your time today, and I encourage you to be a lifelong learner.